The grandmother was only focused on her mahjong game. She let her 7-month-old grandson fall, and he started having convulsions. The daughter-in-law immediately slapped her. The slap made the grandmother's mouth bleed. The young couple was busy building their careers. They couldn't get away during the day, so they entrusted their son, who had just turned 7 months old, to the grandmother's care. Before leaving, they repeatedly warned her, telling her she absolutely must not leave. The child sighed and must watch him closely. But as soon as the couple left, the grandmother got a call from the mahjong parlor downstairs and couldn't sit still anymore. Hearing the baby fussing and crying, she grew completely impatient. She just put the child down on the large bed without guardrails. She locked the house and rushed off to the mahjong parlor, throwing herself entirely into the game at the table. She had already forgotten all about her grandson. Before they knew it, evening had come. The couple, carrying the formula they bought for the baby, hurried home. As soon as they pushed the door open, they heard the baby's faint crying. Running into the room to look, their hearts instantly sank. The child was lying stiffly, having fallen onto the cold, hard floor tiles. There's a huge, swollen lump on the back of her head, with a large, dark purple bruise. Her little face is flushed a deep, concerning purple. Her cries are faint and thread-like. Her whole body is limp and listless. The daughter-in-law's legs go weak with fright. She snatches up the child like a madwoman. Her hands won't stop trembling. Meanwhile, her husband frantically searches the entire house, but finds no sign of his mother. Not long after, the front door swings open. The grandmother walks in, spinning a mahjong tile in her hand. Looking utterly unsatisfied, the game is over. She reeks of cigarette smoke and sweat. She's still muttering about the last hand she played. The daughter-in-law, barely containing a towering rage, asks her where she's been. The grandmother looks completely unconcerned. She states plainly that she was playing mahjong. She adds that the baby was fine, left on the bed. A little fall is nothing to worry about. The husband erupts in anger on the spot, accusing her of being irresponsible. But the grandmother shrugs it off. Rolling her eyes, she fires back, saying kids bumping and bruising is perfectly normal. When she raised her own son, he took worse tumbles all the time. Nothing seemed wrong at first. Young people these days, they just coddle their children too much. As the two argued, the baby in the daughter-in-law's arms suddenly became burning hot all over. Its tiny body began convulsing uncontrollably. Its eyes rolled back in its head, and it couldn't even manage to cry. The terrified couple was beside themselves. They abandoned the argument with the mother-in-law. Grabbing the child, they sprinted to the hospital. The grandmother, however, stood her ground. With a look of utter disdain, she muttered, saying they were making a mountain out of a molehill. Going to the hospital was just wasting money. She even turned around, intending to go back to the mahjong parlor and continue her game. Upon arriving at the hospital, the doctors immediately began emergency treatment. After a series of examinations, the doctor's expression turned very grave. He informed the couple that their child had suffered a head injury, which triggered a febrile seizure. Had they arrived any later, there was a high risk of brain damage, potentially leading to lifelong disability or impaired intellectual development. Severe aftermath. Hearing this, the daughter-in-law collapsed right there in the hospital corridor. Tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. Her heart was flooded with dread and self-blame. Later, when she went to pay the admission fees, she pulled out her bank card to pay. But the cashier informed her the balance was insufficient. She was instantly stunned. That card was supposed to hold $20,000, money they had specifically saved for their child's medical emergencies. How could it suddenly be empty? She quickly checked the bank statement. To her shock, she discovered that right after she and her husband had left for work, $18,000 had been completely drained from the account. The transfer was made by her mother-in-law. Furious and heartbroken, the daughter-in-law immediately called her mother-in-law. She demanded she come to the hospital at once. But on the other end of the line, her mother-in-law showed no concern for the child's condition. Instead, she launched into a furious rant, accusing the couple of faking the illness to swindle her money. She was in the middle of a crucial mahjong game and had no time for the hospital. With that, she hung up the phone. The husband listened to the dead tone on the line. His face turned pale and grim. He was filled with disappointment towards his mother and consumed by guilt towards his wife and child. He clenched his fists tightly, unable to utter a single word. The couple stayed awake at the hospital, keeping vigil over their child all night, repeatedly trying to bring the fever down with physical methods. Until dawn was approaching, the child's fever finally broke, and the convulsions subsided. Only then did the couple breathe a sigh of relief, dragging their exhausted bodies back home. But as soon as they opened the door, they saw the mother-in-law making arrangements for her mahjong friends to come over and play. The mahjong table was already set up in the living room, with snacks and tea prepared. Everything was ready for them. Showing no concern whatsoever for her grandson's serious condition, the daughter-in-law was instantly furious. She blocked the doorway, firmly stopping the arriving guests from entering, refusing point-blank to let them inside. The robust mother-in-law immediately threw herself on the floor in a tantrum, slapping her thighs and wailing, accusing her daughter-in-law of being disrespectful and bullying her elders, deliberately ruining her enjoyment. She even stood up while saying it, reaching out to push and shove her daughter-in-law. The husband's long-suppressed fury completely exploded. He yanked his mother away and, right in front of all her card buddies, exposed how she abandoned her grandson to play cards and secretly pawned the child's life-saving money, laying everything bare. After hearing this, her card friends all criticized the mother-in-law for being incredibly foolish and utterly irresponsible as an elder. They turned and walked away one by one, never wanting to associate with her again. Seeing all her card friends leave, the mother-in-law turned to the couple, crying and making a scene, throwing a tantrum and threatening to go back to her hometown and never help them with the child again, so they could suffer on their own. The daughter-in-law, holding her still weak child, watched her performance coldly. Her heart completely despaired of this mother-in-law, holding not a shred of hope left. They thought she might actually return to her hometown. But before 3 days had passed, the mother-in-law suddenly rushed home in a panic, dropping to her knees with a thud before her daughter-in-law, bowing her head repeatedly in apology. The arrogance of the past was completely gone. Her face was now filled with panic and pleading. The couple thought he had finally come to his senses. Feeling sorry for his grandson, he realized his mistake and wanted to change. But not 2 days later, a group of strangers suddenly showed up at their house. They came waving IOUs, demanding repayment. It was only then the couple discovered their mother-in-law was never truly repentant. She was addicted to mahjong, had lost all her savings, and secretly took out a $50,000 loan with sky-high interest. With debt collectors hounding her daily, she was out of options. Her apology was all an act, a ploy to get the couple to pay off her gambling debts. What was even more infuriating was that she had also secretly taken her daughter-in-law's dowry gold jewelry and pawned it for gambling money. She showed not a shred of remorse the entire time. The daughter-in-law's heart turned completely cold. Without another word, she picked up her child and packed her bags to return to her parents' home. She was determined to cut ties. With this mother-in-law who had no bottom line, the husband watched as the hopeless mess before him. The mother, unrepentant. He thought of his wife at the hospital, staying up all night, her weary face. He recalled the child's seizure, that terrifying critical moment. His mind was made up completely. He followed her to her parents' house, promised his wife he would handle everything properly, would no longer indulge his mother. The husband returned home and confronted his mother directly, demanded she must quit mahjong completely, sign a written pledge. If she touched mahjong one more time, he would sever their mother-son bond. Her dowry jewelry must be redeemed. The gambling debts, he would only help repay the legal portion. The rest she would have to work off slowly herself. From now on, she was forbidden to be alone with the child. If she wanted to be near the child, she needed her daughter-in-law's permission, but the mother-in-law remained unrepentant. She carried on, threw a tantrum, feeling her son and daughter-in-law were cruel. Just as things reached a stalemate, the mother-in-law sneaked out. She went to borrow money from her mahjong buddies, hoping to win back her losses. But as soon as she arrived at the mahjong parlor, she was confronted by a former playing partner. It turned out that the old woman, during her previous gambling sessions, hadn't just lost her own money. She had also dragged several other players deep into the gambling hole with her. One of those players, because of gambling debts, had lost his family. His wife left, his children were gone, his home was destroyed. Now he was there demanding answers. All the neighbors gathered around too, pointing fingers and whispering about the old woman. They all accused her of being selfish, harming others and ultimately herself. The old woman looked at the ruins of her friend's home. She listened to the crowd's accusations. She remembered her grandson convulsing on the floor. She remembered her daughter-in-law's tears of despair. She remembered the look of disappointment in her son's eyes. Finally, she was utterly terrified and utterly awake. Only then did she understand. Mahjong had ruined her and had almost destroyed her entire family. If she continued down this path, stubborn and unrepentant, in the end, she would only be left abandoned and utterly alone. She would lose everything. The mother-in-law returned home, her spirit utterly broken. She walked back into the house, completely dejected. Her first move was to go to the pawn shop and redeem her daughter-in-law's dowry jewelry. She then proactively sought out every single creditor to write up a repayment plan. Next, she went to her daughter-in-law's parents' home, knelt at their doorstep and offered a sincere apology. She didn't make any further demands. She just apologized over and over again. On her own initiative, she gathered up all the mahjong tiles in the mahjong table and threw them out, right in front of the young couple. She vowed never to touch mahjong again. In the days that followed, the mother-in-law set about making amends through her actions. At home every day, she managed the household chores meticulously and kept everything in perfect order. She went out of her way to prepare nutritious meals for her daughter-in-law. She took meticulous care of the child's daily needs. Whenever she wanted to hold the child, she would first softly ask for her daughter-in-law's permission. When watching the child, she never left their side. There wasn't a hint of carelessness anymore. She also found herself a flexible job and kept regular working hours every day, gradually paying off the remaining gambling debts. She has completely shed her former ways, her laziness and selfishness from the past, seeing that her mother-in-law is sincere. Her repentance matches her actions. The daughter-in-law also slowly let go of the past grievances and resentment. She did not continue to hold on to the wrongs. The family once again, lives together. Their days are simple and stable. This story teaches us, as elders, one must shoulder the responsibilities one ought to bear. Do not harm loved ones due to personal desires. One must hold on to their principles. Stay away from harmful habits. Once a mistake is made, only through sincere repentance and making amends through action can familial bonds be repaired, preserving the happiness of the family